Do you remember who Charles Nelson Reilly is?
Yeah. He wore glasses, didn't he? He wore glasses. Tall guy. And that time, that era, it wasn't cool to be like he was. Just real flamboyant in the, you know, the manner he talked and shit. But he did it.
Dumb Dora is so dumb. When she was filling out the job application and got to the part that said sex, she wrote blank.
Being a captain, Gene, I'm outdoors a lot and I'm more ruddy than the usual guy.
Right.
And I said yes now.
Okay.
A voice in my head tells me that I am at the twilight of an extraordinary life. I say extraordinary because of the people who have loved me. I say twilight because of what people say to me in the supermarket. No, it's true. I'll be pushing my wagon, minding my own business, and a woman will see me and go, oh, I thought you were dead. Harry, come here, look who's here. We thought he was dead. He's in jams and jellies. Whatever happened to you? Well, Harry, who is it? He's got 3 names. Harry, he's got 3 names. We'll never forget you. You were so funny. You made Harry and I laugh so many times. You were so wonderful. You'll always be in our heart. I felt like saying it was a lovely service, wasn't it? But you can't blame them. It's been in the papers since 1977. I've always dreamed that somebody would write in, you know, those question and answers about TV stars. If someone could only write about me. And then in the Palm Beach Post in 1977, I could, this is it. This is the real one. Here it is. Question, I couldn't believe it. A question about me. Is Charles Nelson Reilly still alive? No, honest to God, every time I look in the paper, and my friend Burt Reynolds frames them. I would like to know if Charles Nelson Reilly is alive. I have them all in my 2 bathrooms at home. It's amazing. They call the box office wherever I play. And they say, who's playing Reilly in The Life of Reilly? And the box office says, Charles Nelson Reilly. And they say he's dead. No, he's dead. A tall one with a wig and the glasses. He's dead. And the box office says, you're absolutely right, madam, he is dead. But he still manages to come in every night anyway. So while I'm here, you're very kind. So while I'm here and still perpendicular and ready for my close-up, I'll tell you the story of my life. I was born in the Bronx. January 13th, 1931. I'll give you a few minutes. The only son of Mr. and Mrs. Charles Joseph Reilly. And we lived at 1273 Clay Avenue. My mother, Signa Elvira Nelson, was a registered nurse. She worked at the New Britain General Hospital when she married my father. My father, Charles Joseph Reilly, was an artist. And he worked at Paramount Pictures in New York. and he was in charge of all their outdoor displays. And in those days, they were done with watercolor and airbrushing. And he was truly a wonderful artist. My mother, tonight's performance, will be played by Shirley Booth. And my father, who was a small gentleman, will be played by Hume Cronin. The first things I remember when I was young was my mother took me to Macy's. I was so young, and it was so wonderful because you could get a clown ice cream cone upside down, decorated like a clown with whipped cream for the wonderful collar and big red cherries for the buttons. And I wouldn't eat it, I just watched it melt. It was so beautiful, a clown. And then I remember my mother, she used to yell out the window a lot. You kikes, you bastards, get away from my boy! Kikes, get away from him! My mother wasn't very well liked in the neighborhood. And every time she went out, she took a baseball bat with her because there was always a crowd of angry women that followed her down Clay Avenue to the corner of Webster where she had her hair done. And I thought for sure she'd be lynched from a streetlight before she got anywhere near the dryer. But look, I was glad when I was alone because I could go into her sewing basket. I had a puppet show! I had a puppet show. It's going to be at Christ the King Church up on the Grand Concourse. I'm doing Cinderella of the Bronx. This is one of the wicked stepsisters. And Prince Charming is a mounted policeman, a New York policeman on a horse with 4 dominoes for hoofs, and he's going to tap with Cinderella, who's going to tap on the ice skates. Now, a father doesn't like to see his only son sewing dolls. And every time he caught me, he said the same thing. Why don't you go out and throw a ball around? Oh, I tried. I tried to throw a ball around, but I couldn't see the ball. In the Bronx, the ball is so tiny, and stickball is so fast. I didn't know I needed glasses. I didn't know how the other kids saw. And I hated to get up to bat. Look up there. Can you see them? There were 2 fathers in undershirts hanging out the window, played by Sylvester Stallone and Bruce Willis. And every time I got up to bat, they said, "Mary's up!" So I left the field. And then my mother, I remember, I would ask her things and she would say the same thing every time. I would say, "Ma, why does Daddy sit with his back to the faucets in the bathtub?" She said, "Save it for the stage." I said, "Why doesn't Mrs. Toolin, Ma, why doesn't she speak to you anymore in the hall?" "Save it for the stage," I said. You couldn't talk about anything, I guess. You couldn't talk about anything in life, and you just had to save everything for the stage. And then when she was really mad at me, she said, "I can't sit down. I can't move my legs. Because ever since I gave birth to you, I've had this pressure." And then when she was really pissed off, she would knock down my puppet show and she would say, "I should have thrown away the baby. I kept the afterbirth." Well, it's that kind of show. You think it's all going to be game shows? But when I was 4 years old, she took me to the movies for the first time. We got our baseball bat and went up 100. We did. The Grand Concourse, one of the most beautiful. It's in every architectural book. The Loewy's Paradise, a motion picture palace. And I saw my first movie. She carried me all the way up the street because there was a rash of kidnappings at that time and you were afraid to put a child down. We went to the Loewy's Paradise. And I'll never forget when I first put my hands on those golden doors, and I pushed and entered my first theater.
Ma, come on, there's two over here.
Don't drop the baseball bat. Come on. Mom, look. Oh, it's Jeanette McDonald, Mom. Wow.
Princess, Madame,
I'm still married. Or do I?
I felt so safe and it felt warm in the Lower's paradise. Not like at home. And the voice in my head said, "This is a place for you." Wow. When I was I'm sorry, just sometimes it gets to me. When I was in the 4th grade, something wonderful happened.
I got the lead in the school play!
You didn't expect that. That's a dramatic switch, so very few actors can do that.
I got the lead in the school play, it's true.
That was going to be
Columbus! In Columbus the Man!
Sometimes an audience can be so rude.
I ran home, I couldn't wait to tell my mommy! I said, "Ma, I got the lead in the school play. Miss Dee Benedetti wants me to play Columbus. You can't be in a play. You're weak, you're sick, and you're on beef broth. Your eyes are bad, you can never look. No! You can never read this, you can never learn all these words. You can't be in the play. No, you can't. I'm gonna go up and tell that Dago teacher plenty."
She was always telling everybody plenty.
So we got our baseball bat and went up to PS 53. So she could tell Miss Dee Benedetti plenty.
Now, I was only 9 years old, but I knew that Miss Dee Benedetti was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. She had dark hair, and the edges curled into the lace collars of her velvet suits and dresses. And boy, when she took off her glasses, she meant business. And when she spoke, I swear, you could hear music. Mrs. Reilly, I had this play, Columbus the Man, in my desk drawer for 16 terms now. Just waiting for a child like your Charles to come through those doors. Someone who could play Columbus in Columbus the Man. I'm sorry to hear that he's sick and weak and on beef broth. But his eyes are bad, but he can learn this. Mrs. Reilly, I've taught in the Bronx for a long time. And I feel that your son Charles is really the finest actor. Mrs. Reilly, put the bat down, please. I feel that he really is an actor. He has such imagination. And I would like to see the play done this term with Charles. Wow! My mother didn't know to shit or go blind. That's an old French theater term. We rehearsed for weeks in the school gymnasium. And Miss Dee Benedetti did the choreography, whatever they call that. And we had to practice because we had to know that the Santa Maria, the Nina, and the Pinto, whatever the names were, was rolling constantly. And we had this beautiful crow's nest, and on the top of the crow's nest was Fritzi Seligman from down Webster Avenue. He played my boatswain, and he was the first to see land. And he looked out and said, Columbus! His braces were made by Dr. Hepner. Columbus! Columbus! See? I had a wonderful supporting cast.
End of the evening, I stood an egg on end, and Miss Benedetti showed me how to do it to prove that the world was round.
And then we got off the ship, and my daddy made me a flag. And I stood on the land, and I said, I, Columbus, declare this to be America. And there was applause. And the voice in my head said, you're awfully good in this. What a little shit. I sounded like Meryl Streep watching the rushes of Sophie's Choice. But on that day, in the auditorium of PS 53, on the second floor, between Teller and Fuller Avenues, an actor, well, sort of one, an actor was born. Something quite wonderful happened with my father about this time. I told you that he was truly a great artist. I can still see his posters today and the lettering. And he worked at Paramount. The offices were on Broadway and 43rd Street, 1440 Broadway. And when I was very young, I would go to his studio. There were big tables with his posters, and they were just beautiful. The color was beautiful. And there was Marlene Dietrich, and there was Myrna Loy, and Fred McMurray was in a lot of pictures then at Paramount. And they were such wonderful things. And my favorite, though, was the Scarlet Empress. Can you see it with the feathers and the chinchilla coat? That's what Marlene Dietrich on that horse. So Daddy had to do the horse hair and the chinchilla fur and the feathers, and it was beautiful. Daddy, that's my favorite! The Scarlet Empress. Look, that's beautiful, Daddy. And one day, a stranger came to visit my father in the studio. He had an appointment. And Daddy told us that this stranger, the very nice-looking man, had a very good suit, a little mustache, and he came to my father, and this man said, Mr. Reilly, these things are wonderful. This is the best artwork I have seen in advertising. The colors, Mr. Reilly, that's your secret. The colors are wonderful. I have been working in black and white for many years, and I want to now go into color. And I would love you to be a partner. Yes, in California. You could bring your family out to California, and you could be one of my partners. Well, we could go from the Bronx to California, where it's warm all the time. I couldn't believe it. And my father went home to ask my mother what she thought about us moving to California. What are we, pioneers?
I mean, gold diggers? Forget it. We're not going to California. You got big ideas, Reilly. My brother and sister are here in the East. My mother and father are here. No, we're not going. So forget about it. You've got big ideas, Reilly. We're not going to California. The man that begged my father to go to California was Walt Disney. Well, it's that kind of play.
Emily Dickinson once wrote, I live in the state of Massachusetts, but my sister Lavinia lives in the state of regret. And when my father didn't have the strength and the will to grab that opportunity that Walt Disney gave to him, my mother screaming, who's going to listen to a mouse that talks? Nobody, Ma, except the whole world. When my father didn't do that, he too fell into the state of regret. And he began to drink very heavily. And at that time, the end of the 30s, Paramount decided that they didn't need watercolor airbrushing for advertising anymore. And they went with a photograph, which is used today. The photograph, rather than the hand-painted design. And my father's work in 1939 diminished. There was no need for Charles Joseph Reilly, head of the art department of Paramount Motion Pictures. My daddy told me that he can still hear the razor blade of the man who took the gold leaf off, which was once his name, on his door, and it fell to the floor. And he started drinking heavily, and he had what everyone seemed to have in those days, a nervous breakdown. And he had to be institutionalized. And they took my father away. Two men came in a light blue Chevrolet. And they put my father into like a sort of funny sweater. And I said, Mama, what's that? And she explained it was a straitjacket. And they took my father down the stairs. My father, the artist, went into the Chevrolet, the light blue Chevrolet. And he left Paramount and went into a rehabilitation home. In those days, it cost an awful lot of money to do that. There was no insurances and plans. And we had to move out of our apartment. We had to move in with my mother's mother and father and her younger sister and brother in Hartford, Connecticut. And we got on the train, the New York, New Haven, and Hartford train. We got on it at 125th Street because that's the nearest station to the Bronx. And we were going to take the 2-hour trip to Hartford, to our new home. And my mother sat with a broken begonia plant in a bag and cried all the way and kept saying with the wheels of the train, what's going to happen to us, what's going to happen to us, what's going to happen to us. I said, Ma, it's going to be all right. No, Ma, the voice in my head tells me it's going to be all right. But she would have nothing of that. And she cried all the way till the conductor said, Hartford! Wow, this is Hartford. We were going to live at 18 Enfield Street. And my father was going to join us when he got out of the convalescent facility. So there would be 7 of us. My father, me, and my mother, my Aunt Lily and Uncle Benny, and my grandparents in a 2-room apartment with no heat or hot water. 7 of us in 2.5 rooms. I wish you could have met my Aunt Lily. She will be played by Claire Trevor. She was so beautiful. She had beautiful hair. Aunt Lily was a superintendent of nurses at the Jewish Memorial Hospital in Manhattan in New York. She was so lovely. Everyone loved Lil. And she had the hair that smelled of honeysuckle and Lucky Strike cigarettes. And one day she was walking in the hospital, and she was on her rounds. She was a terrific nurse. And the doctor noticed that she was favoring one of her hips as she walked. And he said, "Miss Nelson?" "Yes?" "Miss Nelson, you seem to be favoring a hip." "Well, yes, doctor." "Doctor, when I was 8 years old, I fell through the ice in New Britain, Connecticut in a skating accident. And the pain is excruciating. I sit up all night and smoke. I know I can't lay down, doctor. I don't know how long I can work here. I love it here at the Jewish Memorial Hospital, but I can't turn the patients in the beds. I can't lift them up. I can't. Doctor, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I really am in great pain." And the doctor said, "Lil, there's a new operation. We can take away the pain." Yes, we can take away the pain. And my aunt volunteered for this new operation. It was called a lobotomy. And it didn't work. And my aunt lost her hair, and my aunt lost her mind. And that's why she sat in Hartford smoking her Lucky Strike cigarettes in the front room. I said, "Ma, what happened to Lily's hair, Ma? What happened to her?" My mother said, "Save it for this day." And also under that roof was my Uncle Bernd. He worked at the car barn giving change to the motormen in the trolley company. And he was so handsome, Burt Lancaster would read for the part but wouldn't get it. And every night Uncle Benny came home, he looked in the paper, got dressed up, and went out. Now, Uncle Benny wasn't looking in the paper to see what movies were playing. He wasn't looking in the paper to see what entertainments, what nightclub acts were in the area. Uncle Benny looked in the paper for something else. He was looking to see how many bodies and funeral services there would be in Hartford that night. He saw that there was a service at Taylor and Modine, so we could go there. Then he could run over to Euclid and Euclid. He could go there. And then there were 2 family sittings. 2 family sittings at Weinstein. So Uncle Benny went to the 2 family sittings at Weinstein. And he sat among the dead. People he never even knew. My Uncle Benny was the only one in the family to have an active social life. And then there was my grandparents. No, you had to meet Peter and Emma from the old country, played by Liv Ullmann and Max von Sydow. And they spoke only Swedish. And of course, my mother and my aunt spoke Swedish, and my Uncle Benny spoke Swedish all the time. And so there we were. And every night we'd have dinner, the Reilly Nelson clan would all sit down to dinner, and I would sit between my comatose father and my lobotomized aunt, and my uncle eating fast to get out to the dead. Well, Eugene O'Neill would never even get near this family. Unbelievable! And my mother making new friends out the window. You Pollock bastards, get away from my kid! Pollocks! Pollocks, get away from that boy! Oh. My mother didn't go over very well in the new neighborhood either. And we got fish sticks every night because Birdseye came into view. And you could get 20 fish sticks for 19 cents. But my grandparents didn't want anything to do with fish sticks. They would not give up their herring. And every night they ate this herring. And they would take a herring and they would eat the herring. And they would take the bones and throw the bones across the kitchen floor into the toilet bowl. I never missed! And everybody speaking Swedish. Mamma passade shit. Schitterboel means meatball. Ma, passa de Fiskastugen. Fiskastugen is fish stick. I spent my adolescence in an Ingmar Bergman movie. But that wasn't the worst of it. No, my dear audience, that was not the worst. Don't look, please. Don't look. See the neighbors? Please. The hanging wash out the back on Magnolia Street. That's Mrs. Baggish and Mrs. Pantano. Mrs. Baggish, played by Olympia Dukakis, was talking to Mrs. Pantano, played by Gina Lollobrigida. Stella, come here. Stella, put down the stockings. Come over. Stella, I'm talking to you. Come over here. Stella, shh. Don't you think, Stella, that Mrs. Reilly's son is odd? Well, that's not so bad. But how do you think I felt being the odd one in a family like that? The staging is breathtaking, isn't it? Have you noticed so far? I go from here to there, to here, to there, to there, to here, to here, to there, to there, to there, and back again. Fosse would be so envious. These three men have been in my life for almost 70 years. The first one I'll tell you about is Paul Tresky. We were all school plays together. We were in the grammar school, high school, junior high school. We were in all these plays. Well, see, Paul had a low voice and could play the older parts. That's why he got all the parts, the fathers, the teachers, the rabbis, the priests. He had this awfully low voice, and Paul, he was like a latka. He wasn't heavy, but he was just like a latka. And he had this awful voice. And I can honestly say with all the acting I've been involved with and other people I know, Paul Tresky truly was the worst actor that ever drew breath. He was just awful. Unbelievable. But the best thing about Paul Tresky was his mother. Look, there, can you see her? Come here. There she goes down. She's going down Vine Street to open the Lenox Theater. Mrs. Kate Tresky, see her in the two-piece suit and the little pocketbook? Look at her. Such nobility. Her daughter Ann told me that she had been in 3 Nazi pogroms. That's where they line people up and shoot them in the street. But she was so tiny that she just rolled into the nearest doorway. And somehow this little woman in the two-piece suit with the felt hat survived. She was going to open up the Lenox, the movie house. She was the manager of the Lenox on Albany Avenue. Mrs. Tresky! Hi, it's Charles, Paul's friend. We got in for nothing. Now remember, we went once, and I was sitting in the office of Mrs. Tresky behind the cashier. And Mrs. Tresky was at the desk in front of the big, big picture of Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland. And this is what Mrs. Tresky told me. She said, Charles, come here. Shh. Charles, you're going to be an actor. No, I can tell. Charles, I know. You're going to be an actor. Not Paul. No, Paul doesn't have it. Charles, you have it. No, as my name is Kate Tresky, I know I'm telling you now. You're going to be an actor. Listen to me when I'm talking. I know that I will see you on Broadway. I'm telling you what I'm telling you. I will see you on Broadway. Not Paul. Paul loves it, but Paul doesn't have it. You have it. Mark my words. Wow. Can you smell the rye bread? That's from the Baggish Bakery. My friend Donnie Baggish, his father, Julius Baggish, owns the Baggish Bakery. It's much better rye bread than Pomerantz, that stuck-up store further down on Albany Avenue. And Donnie came to me and said he had 2 tickets to Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus. Ringling Brothers gave free tickets if you helped advertise the show with a big poster thing in the window. And Donald had 2 tickets to that afternoon, the performance of the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, July 6, 1944, and he wanted me to go with him. Wow. I went home to tell my mommy. I said, "Ma, Donald Baggish wants me to..." "You can't go to the circus." Isn't she a doll? "You're going to the circus with your father tonight. You can't go twice in a day to the circus. You can't go with Donald." So we went anyway. And we crept up Enfield Street to Barber Street. And my mother caught us. And she yelled from the porch, "I hope it burns to the ground!" "No, Donald, you would like her if you got to know her." "Donald, look. It's like the Lowy's Paradise. All the sawdust. And this tent with 3 big poles. We didn't have the best seats. We had seats on the side. We could either sit on the right or the left. And we didn't know where to go. And I said, "Donald, let's go on this side because we can go higher." And we got to the highest bleacher. Wow. And the first act was the animal act. Wild animals, lions and tigers, and the crack of the whip and the sawdust flew up. "Look, Donald!" And then a hush fell over the tent because the greatest circus act in the world was going to come and perform next. The Flying Wallendas. They were famous the world over. And they came out, they had beautiful yellow costumes, all feathers, and they were carrying chairs on their shoulders and they made pyramids. Look, they're going to walk all across the 3 rings without a net. And this beautiful acrobat with a headdress of yellow feathers. When she stepped on the wire, Donald screamed, "Fire! Fire!" And the voice in my head said, "Jump! Jump!" Donald and I jumped, and we ran to the other end of the tent, and we ran to the edge of the parking lot and turned around, and it was gone! "Donald! The tent is gone!" It's gone. And there was hardly any sound except the band was playing the Stars and Stripes Forever because that's what they do when there's an emergency. A little girl went past me and her face had been burned away. And she kept screaming, "My mommy's going to kill me, my mommy's going to kill me." Well, she was already dead. Her mother wasn't going to kill her. The circus did that. 168 people were killed July 6th, 1944. And there's my picture with one of my beautiful toupees. And oh, thank God that period is over. And this is what it said in the article. The tent did not collapse. It evaporated. Its roof had been waterproofed with a mixture of 6,000 gallons of gasoline and 1,800 pounds of paraffin, a formula that had been used for decades. You see, the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey people were too cheap to fireproof it. That cost too much money. So they choose to waterproof it so that if it rained, they wouldn't have to give back any money. Donald never said what my mother yelled from the porch, that morning before we went. Donald was a good friend. The other person I want to tell you about, he's very famous now. His name is Alan J. Schwartz. He sends me his books like every 6 months I get a book. That's what it's called, Life Force, Death Force, the Structure of Human Energy and the Biology of Greed. Dr. Alan Schwartz. I said, Schwartzy, that title's a little heavy. Have you ever heard of Tuesdays with Maury? But he got me a job as an usher at the Bushnell Memorial Hall, a legitimate theater in Hartford, Connecticut. And I wore Schwartzy's suit. We were the same height. And I had my uncle's tie. And I stood up in my perch in the second balcony, and I heard something that I had to hold on to the walls. I heard 3,200 people laugh at the same time. And I saw the people on the stage, Beatrice Lilly and Bobby Clark, the Marx Brothers. And then there was a little Jewish woman that came with her troupe every year. And that woman's name was Molly Pecan, and the Yiddish Theater. And I realized that laughter was the same in every language. I have to find that out. Mark Twain said, the only help for mankind is laughter. The greatest thing a man can have is laughter. And I had to learn how they made people laugh. How can you make people forget that maybe they have a sick child or there's been a death in the family? I was going to do what Mrs. Tresky said. I was going to be an actor. I told my mother, maybe I shouldn't rush into that. I told my mother I was going to be an actor. And she said, you got big ideas. Big ideas like your father. You'll never be an actor.
Do you remember an actor named Charles Nelson Reilly?
It rings a bell.
The name sounds familiar. I don't know who it is, though.
Never heard of him.
Well, I mostly remember him on the match game, always not matching the people and getting mad at them.
I think my first memory was Ghost and Mrs. Muir, like way back when.
Captain's hat and with a pipe in his mouth.
He had a very distinctive laugh.
That's very good.
Oh, thank you.
That's very
Thanks.
good.
I remember this guy.
That's great.
Is he still alive?
New York, roaring metropolis of the 20th century. Crossroads of commerce and industry for the world. Offers the thrill of a lifetime.
Years ago, when you wanted to be an actor, you did something that's like really unheard of today. You studied. You studied if you wanted to be an actor. Nowadays, you don't study. And we kids in New York, I was 18, 1950, and we didn't have any money to go study at the Neighborhood Playhouse with Sanford Meisner or the Academy of Dramatic Arts. They wanted $1,000 in advance. And we didn't have that kind. Look, someone saw an ad for a new school that was opening on 6th Avenue. Herbert Berghoff, acting classes. Unbelievable. Herbert Berghoff, the great Viennese director and teacher, will be played by Otto Preminger. And his wife was teaching, two-time Tony winner, 29-year-old Uta Hagen. She was teaching at the school. Uta Hagen will be played by Uta Hagen. And it was $3! $3 to go a week. We didn't have money, but the registrar, played by Maureen Stapleton, named Pippa Hastings, said, go in anyway. Don't come, that's fine, please. Come in. Just come in. Come in anyway. So we all went in. We went in to Miss Hagen's Tuesday 11 o'clock class. That's where she put the beginners. And this is the roll call she read 54 years ago. Mason Adams, please. Jack Albertson, Barbara Barry, Orson Bean, Shelley Berman, Peggy Cass, please. Robert Culp, Charles Grodin, David Hedison, William Hickey, Harvey Korman, please. Frank Langella, Hal Holbrook, Jack Lemmon, Steve McQueen, Ann Mira, Jules Munchin, Geraldine Page, please. Hi, Jerry. Geraldine Page, Charles Nelson Reilly. Here, Miss Hagen. Charles Nelson Reilly, Jason Robards, Jerry Stiller. Jerry, don't stand in the back. There's a seat next to Ann Mira in the first row. Jerry, come down, go over there. Okay, thank you. Jerry Stiller, Tom Troop, and Fritz Weaver. Miss Hagen's Tuesday, 11 a.m. This was my class. We had three things in common. We wanted to go on the stage. We didn't have any money. And all of us, this entire list of Academy Award and Emmy and Tony Award winning actors, couldn't act for shit. I was there! You wouldn't believe these people! Week after week after week, Hal Holbrook and Steve McQueen did the two brothers from Death of a Salesman. You would go out of your mind. Out of your fucking mind! But we knew that woman, Uta Hagen, who sat behind that desk, held the key to what we had to learn. That there was a craft in all of this. There was something to learn. And this whole group, we stayed at 7, 8, 9, and we lived for Tuesday mornings to go to Miss Hagen's class. I see these people today, and we talk about the good old days at Miss Hagen's Tuesday 11 a.m. class. I taught Jack Lemmon how to make a bow tie when we did a play over the weekend once. Gogol's the Inspector General. I sat next to Hal Holbrook. And one day he came to class and he had a bag, Hal Holbrook. And he sat down, and I looked in the bag, it was like a white wig. And like a cheap coat, but like a coat with a big white collar. And I said, Hal, what's this? He said, that's my Mark Twain costume. I do Mark Twain in the schools for $25. I get $25 a performance. Well, we got hysterical. That must be like shitty, Mark Twain. Geraldine Page thought it was George Washington. I said, no, it's Mark Twain. He's still doing it! Only this time he travels in a big van. It says Mark Twain tonight. We were in Raleigh, North Carolina a couple of years ago. I was there with Ruby Dee doing our play, My One Good Nerve, and he was there doing this. And we're in the elevator together. He said, you mean You haven't seen it yet? I said, no, Hal, I haven't seen it yet. I'll see it when you get it right. But in this bag, with that $5 coat, the beginnings of Mark Twain, comes millions of dollars, comes the Tony, comes the Emmy. I tell my pupils, if they want to get ahead, get a bag. Just get a bag and drop a dream in it, and you'll be surprised at what happens. I had to get a job. And I had a friend that worked at NBC. And she got me an appointment with Vincent J. Donahue, who was a famous Broadway producer and director. And NBC hired him to elevate the acting level on the NBC dramas. And the secretary of Vincent J. Donahue was very sweet. She knew I was kind of nervous. And so she gave me a cup of coffee, and I waited. And then she said, Mr. Donahue will see you now. The president of NBC. I walked into his office, and he sat at a very beautiful desk. It was a corner office. You could see all New York and New Jersey and the river. And you could even see the Bronx. See, where I lived. Vincent J. Donahue had a beautiful suit, and he was sitting with a gold cigarette lighter. And I stood for a few moments, and he looked at me. And then he said, they don't let queers on television. It was a very short interview. So I went down the elevator to the lobby, and I sat on one of the couches. I wasn't going to be on television. It's very interesting because what he said didn't bother me at all. I didn't believe it, that I had such armor, that did not bother me at all. What bothered me was when I got home, I would have roaches in the minute rice. That's lousy. But what this man said to me, it didn't bother me because the voice in my head said his words are inaccurate. His words are inaccurate. So it didn't bother me. The things we go through when we're young, it's amazing. But I wasn't going to be on television, so what? What was happening in New York now was a whole movement called Off-Broadway. Off-Broadway. About 1954. And I was in 22 off-Broadway shows in 1 year. 22. And Walter Kerr in the Herald Tribune, he wrote for the Herald Tribune, said, if I see Mr. Reilly's young, energetic face in one more opening number, I'm going to be sick. And then I had an audition for a new musical that was going to be in a nightclub called Nightcap. Phyllis Newman came from the University of Miami with a little friend. And she said, my friend has written a review and you're going to be in it. I can't believe it. And she got me an audition. And I went down to this one little room apartment to audition for this little composer, had little shoes like a Chinese woman. And I went in and I said, I'm going to sing Marianne, I Want to Love You from the New Moon, but you can't look at me. No, turn away. Play the piano, but don't look at me. And when I sing, I'll look into the wall, but you can't look at me when I sing. Now here I am going around New York, trying to be a singer with one slight stipulation. Nobody can look at me when I sing. So I sang and I dazzled him with my high note. And when I finished, he said, "You're in the show." Well, of course. You're in the show. You're the comedian. And that was the day I met Jerry Herman. That was off Broadway. 22 shows I did, and finally I got to Broadway. My first show was Bye Bye Birdie. And Bye Bye Birdie was... And I played a part of Mr. Henkel, my own part. I understudied Paul Lynde as the father and went on for him every Thursday because he had a contract with the Perry Como show. And then I understudied Dick Van Dyke as the lead Albert Peterson. And the next show I got in was How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And that was 1962. And it was raining that night, and that became my good luck sign, rain, like tonight. And then Jerry Herman wrote Hello, Dolly, and I got into that and stayed into that forever and ever. So anyway, Hello, Dolly, I had Mrs. Tresky come because she said she'd see me on Broadway. So she came in my dressing room, and she had a wonderful time, and she brought her daughter Anne, and we made a couple of dates because she was going to be in New York a few days. So we went out to Sardi's one night. And Mrs. Tresky said to me, "You know, Charles, who I would like to meet? I'm 94 years old already." Who? Like, what, a glance out the window it went. I'm 94. You know who I would like to meet? Molly Pecan. Well, I said, "Kate, she's like Chaplin. I mean, Molly Pecan is a legend. You just don't meet these people." I knew her. She was a good friend. Why? Because we did 2 car 54s, Where Are You together. I knew her very well. And she used to come to Sardi's often with her husband Yonkel. So I went to Milk and Honey. That's where Molly Pecan was playing on Broadway. And I said, "Molly, my friend," and I explained all about how this woman made me an actor when I was a kid and believed in me, and how she was visiting in New York, and she wanted to meet you, and I made out I didn't know you. And she said, "Sure, Charlie, whatever you want." So we made a date at Sardi's. And we came in Sardi's, and Mrs. Tresky with a 2-piece suit and a little felt hat. We came in, and my friend Molly Pecan, with a dozen roses, long stem you never saw. She got up on a chair on one of the front round tables at Sardi's. And when little Mrs. Tresky came through the door, Molly Pecan stood on the chair and said, "Kate Tresky, I always wanted to meet you!" Christmas in Connecticut. I would try to go home for every Christmas. And as soon as the carols started on the radio, my mother would say, "Turn those goddamn songs off!" Merry Christmas, Ma. And you knew it was Christmas when my father, he would go to the goods section in West Hartford in the garbage, looking for the best liquor bottles, the best Hennessy bottles, the best brandy bottles, and he would wash all the bottles in this kitchen sink. And then he would put the good bottles with the good labels, and then he would take a bottle of 55-cent shit, so that when the people came for Christmas, they think we had the money to buy the big bottle. And all we had was about 12 bottles with about 3/4 of an inch of liquid at the bottom. But that was my father. And we waited. And Daddy made a sign. He did make great signs. "Merry Christmas to all." And nobody came. Christmas after Christmas. Nobody came through the door. That was my home with my mother and father. And my father started to decorate the tree, and he started to drink the bottoms of all the bottles, one after another. And it made him very, very crazy. And the ornaments were falling on the floor and breaking. And finally, my mother, every Christmas Eve, you could absolutely set your watch on it. By it by midnight, she would pull down the Christmas tree, Mom! And all the ornaments would crash and go all over the floor. That was Christmas. Decades later, when I was living in Beverly Hills, my mother visited for Christmas. And we were driving down Sunset Plaza Drive to make a left on Sunset. The Playboy Club used to be there. And they had, look at that, a 4-story white and pink Christmas tree. And the Santa Ana winds were coming. And as we drove down and made a left on Sunset, the winds took the tree, and the tree fell right in front of our car on the hood. And I looked at my watch. It was 9 o'clock in California. Now my father was working in Pratt & Whitney. He would come home from work, he would have a beer, sit down on the couch, read the paper, and fall asleep. And the phone would ring twice. He'd get up, put his hat and Mackinac on, and go out. Every single night. He'd come home, have a beer, lie down on the couch, read the paper, fall asleep, and the phone would ring twice. He'd get up, put his hat on and Mackinac, and go out. Every night. He'd come home and the phone would ring twice. And my mother figured out it was a signal. See how the plot is thickening toward the end of the play? We found out from the neighbors that her name was Miss Marion, and she wore garish clothes, and she had big harlequin glasses. Miss Marion will be played by Dame Edna. I was happy that Dame Edna was in the family, because that way I wouldn't be the oddest one. So my father left my mother. She screamed at him all the time. I don't want to go anywhere with you. You got no teeth in your mouth. You've got no teeth in your mouth. Well, he truly didn't have teeth in his mouth. So I was making some money then on Broadway, and I bought him a set of teeth. He put the teeth in, cocked his hat, and left my mother. My friend, Dr. Ben Koplik on Park Avenue, made the teeth. My mother would never divorce him, but he married Miss Marion anyway, so he was a bigamist. Boy, this is some plot, isn't it? After Broadway, I had the chance to go to Hollywood. Hollywood. Because I got on The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. I had an 8-minute part, and Hope Lang said, don't let him go. Because I was only supposed to be in the first 8 minutes of the pilot episode. She said, don't let him go, he's funny. It was so wonderful to be in Hollywood with all these craftspeople with these cameras. The wind was blowing and the tree was moving, because the man was lying on the floor, the wire going like this. I thought, wow, someone thought of that. And I did The Ghost of Mrs. Muir. 2 years we had a party. My mother, she was in California. We were going to Hope Lang's house. I said, Mama, she's a very good friend. She's a great cook. Her mother used to own a restaurant. Please. And we got to Brentwood in this beautiful party, and she opened her mouth and she just made a fool of herself to everybody. And finally, Carol Cook, the funny actress, said to her, "Stay on your paper!" She made you crazy. You couldn't please her. Shirley Booth met my mother at Hope Lane. And she said, "Charles, your mother is the worst woman I ever met." I said, "I know, Shirley, but what a great part for you." Oh, sure. And then after The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, I did so many shows on television. I did the Dean Martin show. I was a regular, and Steve Allen, I was a co-host. For John Davidson, for Dinah Shore. I was on Nanny and the Professor. I had my own pilot films I made. They didn't sell, but I made them. And I had 2 children's programs. Now, I got into a terrible habit. I got the TV Guide, and I would look and see how many times I'm going to be on television. Well, that's terrible. I had to say my whole name, not just the show. And I would count, and oh, wow, look at this. 3 times on Thursday afternoon. And next week, I'm going to be on 56 times. And to think years and years ago, I was told that I would never be allowed on television. And now I got to try to figure out, who do you have to fuck to get off? But the show that I love the most.
Would you welcome Charles Nelson Reilly?
The Tonight Show. I was on Johnny's couch 106 times. But this one evening, I was on with a woman who had a show at the affiliate NBC station in Chicago, where the ratings went off the wall. She was so important when she came to Hollywood. She was talking about her show, and she was talking about Shakespeare in the Park. Oh, Johnny, there's something that's going to be so marvelous because we're having a Shakespeare in the Park for the children. It'll be the children hear the words of Shakespeare's song. So I said, I love Shakespeare too. And she said, what would someone like you know about Shakespeare? Well, wow. I couldn't believe it. I don't mind being insulted. I'm insulted a lot. Awful lot. Truly. But I don't want to be insulted in living color that can go into every living room in the world, because that's where Mr. Carson went. So remember what Emily Dickinson said, you never know how tall you are until you're asked to rise? Well, I rose. What would someone like you know about Shakespeare? I rose and I said, Doc, can I have some chords? Andy, bring the lights. Good. That's good, Andy. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. Or that the everlasting had not fixed his cannon against self-slaughter. God. God, how weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world. I have heard that guilty creatures sitting at a play have by the very cunning of the scene been struck so to the soul that presently they proclaim their malefactions, for murder, though it have no tongue, will speak with most miraculous organ. I'll have these players play something like the murder of my father before mine uncle. I'll observe his looks. I'll tempt him to the quick if he but blench. I know my course. The spirit that I have seen may be the devil, aye. And the devil hath the power to assume a pleasing shape. And perhaps out of my weakness and my melancholy abuses me to damn me. I'll have grounds more relative than this. The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. Anything else you want to know, lady? Thank you very much. You'll be happy to know that this is the final scene. My pill is wearing off. I met Burt Reynolds 50 years ago. He's been my good friend for 50 years. He was staying at my friend's apartment in New York, a wonderful stage manager named George Quick. And he let all the actors stay. Nobody had money in those days. And he let Burt stay there. And I went over to see my friend David Hedison, who was also staying on another couch in the apartment. And there was Buddy Reynolds, just up from Florida. And he was in a Broadway show, Mr. Reynolds, was in Mr. Roberts with Charlton Heston and Orson Bean. I said, Orson Bean, he's in my class. And he gave me 2 tickets to see him that night in Mr. Roberts at the City Center. The first moment I met him, he gave me. The last thing he gave you, I'll tell you in a little while. So anyway, Mr. Reynolds decided about 25 years ago to open a theater. And he told his father. Now, his father is Burt Reynolds Sr., the chief of police of Dade County. I'm not kidding. And Burt Sr. said, you can open up a theater, but if you bring one of those sissy fairies into this house, I'll shoot him dead on the rug in front of your mother. So I went right over. I went into Mr. Reynolds' house, and I said, Mr. Reynolds, sir, these pipes are wonderful, but there's no mouthpieces. They're all bitten closed. Mr. Reynolds, your son has been so extraordinary to me. Could you please let me take the pipes, because I have a man in California who put new mouthpieces on. And then we sat down, and I tried his tobacco, and he tried mine. And he said, do you ride, Charles? I said, like the wind. So Burt Reynolds opened this amazing school. And then he gave me a beach house, a mansion on Jupiter Island, not Jupiter. Jupiter Island, which is the wealthiest colony of people in the United States. Look it up, please. Jupiter Island, Florida. And we went to move me into the house, and he had the keys. And we got to the house, and he said, I can't go in there, Charles. I thought I could, but I can't, because it's the house I had with Sally Field. And isn't that funny? I thought I could, but I can't go in there. I said, give me the keys. I hardly knew her. So I went in. And I wondered if my mother could ever imagine me in this amazing house. I'm sorry that she could live long enough to come. There were wings, bedrooms. You see, what I have to explain to you, you try to figure out why your parents are like they are, and it takes a long time. No! I told you no. About the time I was knocking him dead as Columbus, the PS-53, my grandmother said this to my mother. Signe, you are my strongest child. And you have to promise me, because I have cancer and I'm getting old. You have to promise me that you will take care of your younger sister and brother, Bernd and Lily. Signe, please. You have to promise me. And that's what my mother did for the rest of her life, until Lily and Benny both passed away. She took care of them. If you laugh tonight, It helped me so much in my life, but if you laugh tonight, you have to thank my mother. Because she gave me my blue eyes and she gave me many things, but she also gave me my sense of humor, because my mother was a very funny woman. I'd come home and I'd sit and watch this beautiful ocean. And with my Manhattan, I would wonder if I was a good teacher. If I see one more scene from Agnes of God, I'm going to go crazy. Those girls get so excited. I don't know anything about the baby! There wasn't a baby! There isn't a baby! I don't know anything about the baby! That was better, Jill. Better this week. That was good. You see, teaching acting is not like arithmetic or history. It's not concrete. It's ethereal. It's like a vapor. It's like the smoke from the circus fire going up. Sometimes I'll go teach master classes in various colleges. I can't use the same voice as the match game because that's silly. So you go and you teach these master classes, and these young kids are looking at you, wondering what someone from the game shows is doing in their college. But you see, what these kids don't know, but they soon find out, that when I sit down to teach, I don't sit alone. I sit with Mrs. Tresky, and I sit with Sister Marie LaSalette, and I sit with Cinderella of the Bronx. And I sit with Miss Benedetti, she even brings her spotlight. All of us sit down together to teach, not just me, Uta Hagen and Herbert Berghoff and Abe Burrows and Frank Lesnar and Hope Lang. And I sit with all of my pupils, especially the 40 pupils that I lost to AIDS. I can hear them sing every day. And we all sit down together and we teach a class, because all of those people are the roots of what I do. Each and every one of the people I told you about tonight, each and every one of them made me the man I was destined to be when I was born so long ago in the Bronx, brought into this world by Dr. Leon Brodsky. I was sitting in the beach house once, and I heard this screeching on the beach, and I ran out. Ah! There was a pelican all tied up in fish twine. I ran in the house. I said, wait a minute, I'll get a scissor. I'll be right back. And I came back, and I started to cut wherever I could see the heavy fish line. It was all over his body and his legs and in the wings. And the hook was in the mouth, in the beak, and I tried to get the hook out, and the sinker was resting on the eye. But the neck, I couldn't find where the cord was. It was embedded in the neck and the feathers, and it was bleeding. And I finally found it. I got it. Breathe. Breathe. Good. Breathe. Good. And then the hook. Ah. The eye looks okay. The sinker didn't hurt the eye. He seems okay. Now, I thought if I could push him into the water, he would heal faster. So they're much larger here than they are on the West Coast. The East Coast pelicans are big, so I started to push him to the water, and he went. I said, Juani's. I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. Oh, wow. You can't take off from the sand. So if we wait, the tide will come in and go under you, and the tide will take you out. Wow. He told me that. So, we'll just wait for the tide. My father knew Walt Disney.